The movie starts with Yoshika having a self-reflection. She has two men whom she calls Ichi and Ni, and she starts to imagine what life would be like with either of them. She could get married to Ni and learn to be happy, but her heart still belongs to Ichi. Before her infamous reflection, Yoshika is a young and hardworking accountant at a firm. She's got a colleague she barely tolerates. He's about her age and very awkward in his antics. Yoshika casually complains about him in the restroom to her fellow female colleagues. Much later, another colleague confides in Yoshika that she's fallen in love with someone in the company. Yoshika is happy for her, but has personally vowed to keep work and her love life apart. In return, the colleague teases Yoshika for still being in love with a guy from grade school. Yoshika can't help it. The heart wants what it wants. Yoshika falls asleep and dreams about Ichi, traveling back to her school days. Back then, she was an introverted, geeky-looking kid, living in a bubble with her sketches. On this fateful day, Ichi approaches her desk and helps himself to one of her sketches. If he knew the caricature drawings were of him, then he didn't say. The giveaway was the hair. Yoshika has been even more obsessed with him since then. She often dreams about being with him, constantly gushing about him with the people she interacts with. In the comfort of her house, Yoshika researches extinct animals, taking a particular liking to ammonites. A parcel arrives, and she eagerly opens it to reveal an ammonite's shell. Wait, people can just buy fossils? Yoshika has many talking companions, including a blonde-haired waitress at a cafe she frequents. The waitress is up to speed on Yoshika's weird hobby and latest purchase. The accountant remarks that she's much like an endangered species. Maybe that's why she takes solace in reading about and collecting expensive fossils out of her pay grade. At work, Yoshika's colleague, the earlier confider, invites her to a party. Yoshika turns down the offer at first, but the colleague insists that she has to attend, as she plans to confess her feelings for an admirer. She offers that Yoshika could record her summoning up the courage to finally confront her feelings. Reluctantly, Yoshika agrees. The colleague goes on to tease Yoshika for never knowing people's actual names. She's too removed from reality to ever remember and prefers to call everyone funny names she coins. The colleague's real name is Ms. Tsukishima. After an unnecessarily long toast from Ni, Ms. Tsukishima pulls Yoshika to her side, while she speaks to her crush, Takasugi, who is very receptive. Yoshika opts to leave the party early, disinterested in her colleagues goofing around. Ni sees her leave and follows her. She pretends to be busy and decides to retreat into the restaurant, after she blurts out that she calls him Ni because he wrote the number upside down. Just before she can leave, Ni takes an unexpected photo of them and requests her contact details so she can have a copy. Later that evening, Yoshika receives the picture and goes ahead to save his contact with Ni. With the night here, it's time for Yoshika to daydream about Ichi. Her teenage self walks in on him serving a punishment, tasked by a form teacher to write a statement 100 times. Summoning courage, she engages him in conversation, but it doesn't last long. He seems disinterested, and she lets him be. She later tells her talking companion that it was the first time she had been brave enough to speak to Ichi. She had suggested he purposely tweak one out of the 100 statements, and the next time he faced a similar punishment, he had followed her suggestion, much to her delight. Ni texts Yoshika wanting to hang out at a place of her choice. He shows up in a suit, explaining he's just rounded up some sales. They step into a club, and Yoshika tells Ni about herself at his request. He interrupts her, picking out the part that she's single. He then asks her if she fancies exercising. Ultimately, the club is too noisy, and he pulls Yoshika through the crowd so they can talk outside. Ni momentarily leaves her, overwhelmed by the alcohol. Yoshika gets him a bottle of water to freshen up after he vomits in the alleyway. He mentions he's noticed her for a while now, and he's been meaning to talk to her properly. He goes on to ask her out, but it's under the most ridiculous circumstances. He's just been sick, and the alleyway seems like a spot to pick up sex workers. Still, Ni is hoping she can think about it. When reality hits her, Yoshika leaps for joy that someone has taken an interest in her. She goes about telling her usual talking companions about this milestone. A part of her wish for the confession came from Ichi. A cloud of smoke jolts Yoshika awake. Her duvet has caught in the heater and is burning. Frantically, she tries to put out the flames. When that proves futile, she dashes out to save herself. But on second thought, she runs back in. She manages to dump the entire duvet into her bathtub full of water, finally extinguishing the fire. The incident makes her realize that one day, she'll inevitably kick the bucket. And if she must eventually leave this earth, then it's time to kick things up a notch. No more daydreaming about Ichi. She has to find the real him. Yoshika decides to borrow the identity of a former classmate that's now abroad. She plans to organize a reunion that her classmates, including Ichi, will attend. She got the idea from Ni. He'd organized the office party just so he could talk to her. Former classmates catch wind of the reunion, but none of them have been able to contact Ichi. Yoshika and Ms. Tsukishima walk together, and Ms. Tsukishima reveals that Ni has been asking about her, stuff like hobbies and favorite spots to hang out. Ms. Tsukishima wonders if Yoshika would prefer that Ni doesn't bother her. Yoshika replies that Ni has confessed his feelings for her, but she's still fixed on Ichi. Regardless, Yoshika goes fishing with Ni, but she's not enjoying it. It's too cold, and she partly agreed because the mountains nearby are a spiritual spot she could go to ask God to reunite her with Ichi. Ni asks her if she's given his proposal a thought. The answer is no. Yoshika excuses herself to join the others in prayer. She uses the moment to contact someone who miraculously has a headway. Ichi is in Tokyo but will be returning home soon. Yoshika, under her pseudonym, insists that he must attend the reunion. She returns elated, while Ni has been worried sick. She'd mentioned wanting to take a dump, but she took an awfully long time. Yoshika, however, is too caught up gushing about Tokyo to acknowledge Ni's concern. Before they part for the night, Ni gives Yoshika a Christmas gift, not minding that she didn't get him anything in return. Yoshika packs a bag and sends a message under her pseudonym that she's suddenly fallen sick and won't come for the reunion. Everyone is excited to see each other after a long while. Yoshika is still too introverted to mingle, and no one remembers who she is. But none of that matters when Ichi finally shows up. Everything else fades into the background, and Yoshika freezes in time. She somehow summons the courage to ask who now lives and works in Tokyo. A handful of people raise their hands, including Ichi. Yoshika slyly gets everyone's contacts after taking a group photo and suggests that those who relocated to Tokyo should have a second reunion. Ichi drags his feet at first, stating that he's busy. Eventually, he promises to make himself available if possible. Yoshika spends the rest of the holidays on cloud 9, reassured that she's in love with Ichi. She returns home and receives a note from Ni asking her if they can go on another date. Yoshika confides in Ms. Tsukishima. She's planning to marry the person she loves the most, but she's never been in a romantic relationship, and the thought of getting into one scares her. Ms. Tsukishima, in return, advises her to take things slow. Talking about marriage is quite too soon. She also shouldn't be scared and go for Ni. He's a nice guy and won't hurt her. Nice guy decides to be a pest. He spots her on her way to her reunion and starts to impose all the stuff they should be doing at that hour. Yoshika makes her irritation known, but Ni is quite dense. He won't stop following her, even after she tells him to go away. Her alone time with Ichi is ruined because Ni keeps inserting himself. He's not aware of who Ichi is, or Yoshika's unyielding love for him. She soon gets rid of Ni and joins the reunion. Desperate to stand out to Ichi, Yoshika tries various antics that go unnoticed. There's another girl who's successfully stealing his attention to Yoshika's dismay. The girl even tries to be friendly to Yoshika, who's in a bad mood. Yoshika accepts defeat, choking back tears, when Ichi returns to the living room and starts up a conversation with her. They both have a lot to admit. Yoshika's comics were inspired by him. Ichi, on the other hand, admits middle school wasn't rosy. He was oppressed, regardless of the exterior love and adoration. Everyone was looking at him except Yoshika. So one fateful day during the sports festival, he confronted her. He instructed her to look at him. Conversations are different from what they are with Ni. Ichi doesn't interrupt her, and happens to also be fascinated by extinct animals. This is music to Yoshika's ears. They talk at length about their shared interest, and Ichi comments that Yoshika is just like him. For years, Yoshika has thought the same. He wanted to be friends with her all those years back. Now, things start to seem too good to be true. It's heartbreaking when Yoshida realizes that he doesn't know her name. The heartache tallies all through her journey home. She doesn't know the names of her talking companions because she's never actually spoken to them. They're just people she wishes she could speak to. Maybe that's why she's so fascinated by extinct creatures, as she's often considered just disappearing from a world she can't connect with. It's a sad situation, and in the privacy of her house, Yoshika cries. But there's one person who knows her name, and he's always excited to see her. This time, he takes her to one of his favorite spots, hoping she likes it. Yoshika finds herself smiling, and they go on to play table tennis. They're having a picnic date when Yoshika wants to know if they're a steady couple. She indirectly says she's comfortable with him, but not in love. Ni, on the other hand, is in love. At some point, he leans in for a kiss, and that's when Yoshika panics, causing her to run off. They find each other on their way to work, and Ni apologizes for making such a move. Ms. Tsukishima has influenced his decisions a great deal. She's been feeding Nii information about Yoshida, although he only went that far because he's trying to get it perfectly right with her. Yoshida decides on her own. She wants Ichi over Nii. Feeling overwhelmed, Yoshida posts a dreary message online, confessing her unwillingness to keep living. Ms. Tsukishima sees her in her damper state and shows concern, but Yoshida shuns her. Yoshida is upset that Ms. Tsukishima was feeding Nii information about her. She'd confided in her colleague, and in return, she was betrayed. Now she's convinced Nii is a pervert, adamant about chasing her because he's learned she's inexperienced. It all boils down to Ichi. If only he could remember her name. Yoshida takes a maternity leave from work. Nii sees her on the stairs, but has nothing to say. She returns home with her belongings and proceeds with mundane indoor activities. Ms. Tsukishima calls her, but she ignores it. Eventually, she listens to the voicemail her colleague left. The lady just wants to check up on her and apologizes on account of the fact that Yoshida seems mad at her. Yoshida is moved to call Nii, but he blocked her. With no other option, she reaches him through the company line, compelling him to come as a salesperson attending to a customer. She reveals she's not pregnant, and she only used that to spite him and Ms. Tsukishima. Nii thinks she's crazy, and they have a heated argument that draws the attention of passers-by. They take their dirty laundry indoors and continue to express their feelings. Nii truly likes Yoshika, even though she's been awful to him, and remains adamant about justifying it. Their back and forth carries on, and this odd movie draws to an end with Yoshika finally saying Nii's real name before embracing him in a kiss.